Hey there guys, how's it going? Welcome back to File Archive. It's good to have you here. I'm actually on vacation right now. I'm in a very warm place and it's very comfortable, but man, I needed a vacation. That being said, a lot of what I do on vacation is I think about Force of Will. And so I was thinking about a couple of videos that I was maybe wanting to make while I was down here. And one of them was this video. And I'm going to talk about the title of this video in just a second. But first, in order to try and illustrate my point, I want to talk about why Olivia is my favorite ruler. So Olivia, if you were there when she was first released, it was back in Assault into the Demonic World. The thing about Olivia that is so fascinating to me is that she was very much given aggressive tools right out the gate, and there were a lot of people who noted that right away. They noted that you could play Fish Drive, and you could play Terra Thunderfish and do a whole bunch of different aggro stuff to your opponent, and you could combo that with Dolly to be able to kill as early as turn 2, right? Of course, this was a little difficult to manage because there was a lot of interaction, there was a lot of defense your opponent could employ to stop that from happening. That being said, what did you fill the deck with otherwise, right? You had probably the best card in the deck, and the reason to play the deck, Thunder Empress's Strike. This is one of the best reasons to play the deck because it is a toolbox that can fetch a 2-cost Water Resonator, a 2-cost Water Chant from the deck, and put them onto the chase, and you can essentially have a toolbox that can essentially do almost anything. That being said, what are you grabbing? Well, you're grabbing any card in the game, quite frankly, which is already kind of remarkable to begin with. But in case you needed some targets, she came with her own targets as well. There are other aspects of the card, though, that I think we should talk about before we get too far ahead of ourselves, right? It can deal 800 to a thing for each card in your hand. So with just 2 cards in your hand, you're dealing 16, which is pretty impressive. It can draw you 2 extra cards, and it can bounce the field back to the owner's hands, right? So there's a lot of interesting utility that comes from this card. And there's technically a mode to also like put that card back in your hand, but that's if you're rolling with that card for some reason, and you're getting a low roll, and you just put that card back in your hand. If you're doing those kind of shenanigans with the card, you're probably not using the card right. But that's neither here nor there. She also has a ton of cards that she got in the same set. So she got things like Surging Lightning and Pulsing Thunder to manage board control, right? And to be very lenticular in how you use them, especially in the case of Surging Lightning, right? This is a card that can destroy any entity on the field. So whatever you need it to be, it's very open-ended, very helpful. You also have cards that deal burn damage, that bounce cards, that cancel cards, that recover your stones, cards that can help navigate weird board states by making your opponent banish resonators, making tokens, things like that. So Olivia has a lot of cards with a lot of effects, and they're all essentially multimodal. And what I mean by that is there are many modes that you can use, of course. So when I was looking at this, and I'm looking at the way that I'm building Olivia decks nowadays, especially in the Journey to Ravidra metagame, I was really considering what is this deck trying to do, and how do I win decisively? Because I was piloting Olivia as a kind of control deck. Like, she was responding to what my opponent was doing, as mostly playing on my opponent's turn, and that's kind of where people have settled. Like, that's where Olivia really feels at home. And that is, just being a control deck that can sometimes put out a Terra Thunderfish and kill your opponent. And lo and behold, I was having a lot of success with that deck. I was able to pilot 1 or 2 Terra Thunderfish, a couple of Kushiel, and a couple of Dorian for some aggressive pressure against my opponents. And suddenly my control deck is switching to an offensive style of play when it was the right time. All of this is to say, Olivia represents a lot of what is going on in the strategy circle. Now, I am somebody who watches distraction makers on YouTube. I think they're really great. They're really helpful, even though they're Magic YouTubers. Gavin and Forrest. Forrest has taken a little bit of a hiatus, but it's mostly Gavin's channel, from what I can see at this point. They talk design of all kinds of games, right? They use the principles of game design to talk about their different strategy card games, and one of the things that they've done and what they've observed is the strategy circle. And so I'm going to put that up on screen right about now, and that is going to be talking about the three main archetypes that you find, three main styles of play that you find in most strategy games, including, I would say, in Force of Will. So you have the rush strategy, which is all about speed and about pressure. You then also have the economy style strategy, which is about mounting power over the course of a game. And then defensive strategies, which are all about interacting with your opponent and preventing them from doing the thing that they want to do. When you expand that out, you start to notice that there is a proactive dimension and a reactive dimension, and as well as an interactive dimension and a non-interactive dimension, which is all about are you trying to interact with your opponent, or are you doing things that are not to be interacted with, if you catch my drift. So let's dive into the second layer of this, right? Because when you start to combine these different strategies together, you get the classic Magic the Gathering archetypes. When you combine Rush and Economy, you get combo decks. When you combine you also can get Battlecruiser styles or Voltron styles if you prefer. I personally prefer Megazord because I grew up in the 90s. That's neither here nor there. When you combine defense and economy, you get control decks. And when you combine defense and rush decks, you get tempo decks, right? So you get all these really interesting archetypes that kind of are kind of coming up as a result of certain cards being put together. So aggro, combo, Voltron, control, stun slash prison slash stacks, and tempo decks. These are all the main archetypes of strategies you can play in a trading card game like Force of Will. And this maps really well onto Force of Will and has really started to inform my deck building and the way that I play the game as I play the decks that I play. So let's talk about Olivia once again, right? Olivia has all of these tools available to her. She has aggressive tools, she has economic tools, and she has defensive tools. And at any moment in a game, it really does depend on the situation, but you can switch between all of these different pieces, and that's what makes her a true mid-range deck. Where you start to have problems, which is something I can say for myself as an Olivia player, where you can start to find problems is if you are kind of misbalanced or unbalanced in one of these different aspects. So if you have a lot of ways to draw cards and you have a lot of ways to stop your opponent from doing things, but you don't have an actual way to kill the game, your deck might feel a little unbalanced, which is why I was trying to diversify my win conditions in Olivia that are very strong, difficult to interact with, and are going to be cards that put a lot of pressure on the opponent because they're aggressive power behind them, right? Like Terra Thunderfish, like Kushiel, like Dorians, like all these different cards, right? So the thing that I think does this in Force of Will is, unlike Magic, and it happens in Magic, but it doesn't happen in the same way as it happens in Force of Will. Force of Will has a disproportionate amount of multimodal cards that are high utility, but also a design element that is very lenticular. In that sense, it's very open-ended, right? So a lot of our cards can be used to do a lot of different things in a lot of different contexts of game states. So one of the chief examples I have of this, besides Olivia, is my current, like one of my favorite decks out of Journey to Ravitra, and that has been Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is, well, it was more like that when we had MPO2 in Paradox format, but this is a little bit different now. Gilgamesh in Journey to Rhavidra is very interesting because he's very clearly a combo deck. He's very much an equipment deck from Magic, right? Magic is all about like, hey, you have these artifacts that go on top of your creatures, and that gives them additional stats and additional abilities, and that's how you're gonna end up winning the game. But what you ultimately have in Gilgamesh is you're gonna have moments in which you realize I'm supposed to play slower and mount more power over the course of a game, rather than try and combo off early in the early game against certain decks. What's more important though, and this has been my experience of this particular deck, and it's honestly kind of been there in the background of all of the decks that I've played since around Saga Cluster, this idea that if your Gilgamesh deck is more equipped to be a mid-range deck, you're going to have a better time. So for instance, in the mirror match, how often do I slow down and play my Mistress so that I can then use my Nomadic Trailbound Mistress's will production for something like an Epiphanic Priest to stop my opponent's Mistress from sticking on the field longer term? When do I use my Master Rune to clear the board and make it so that my opponent doesn't comfortably have tokens or their own Mistress online, and I can then easily start equipping things onto my own resonators and stuff like that in order to start winning the game that way. When we still had Inanna in the format, it was one of those instances where I had to think, how do I play reactively with Inanna so that I get the most value going into my turn, right? It's even more the case in what Wanderer was in Journey to Rhavidra, right? It was the sense of, how do I use my reactive tools in the most advantageous way so that my combos can actually go off? I had to think in terms of mid-range. And so I think all decks in Force of Will, when they can act in a mid-range case, they're going to be ending up in better places. Another chief example of this from the opposite end of the strategy circle is Mistletoe. We've been doing a lot of work with Mistletoe over at our locals, and one of the things that I noticed right away with Mistletoe is I've got to know when to be aggressive with my aggressive tools and know what those aggressive tools are. When do I play an Inanna and get a Durandal and equip a Durandal and just go, right? That's an important moment in the deck for you to realize, I'm going to stop being defensive and start being offensive. There are some people who are using Therapist to make your, with Gary and Freaky, of course, in order to make this work, you need to have them as well. But you're playing your Therapist and flipping your Mistletoe on turn 2 in order to be more aggressive and more into that Battlecruiser style, where you get a whole bunch of things on the field, but you're also representing that stacks pressure, right? So you're representing a big body that's very threatening, that's hard to remove, but you're also shutting your opponent down a little bit. And I think that's what people are starting to recognize is so compelling about Mistletoe. She has this ability to be very mid-rangey. When you play her correctly, or when you play her in that mid-range style, you're going to get a lot of value out of that. So I think it's really interesting that this strategy wheel maps so well onto Force of Will, and it's been changing the way that I've been building my decks. I want to let you, I want to kick it back to you all. So what do you think down in the comment section down below? Does this have any value? Like, do you see any value in this the strategy circle from Distraction Makers? Does this make you think about how you build decks differently, what tools you use differently? Let me know down in the comment section down below. I'll link Distraction Makers and their strategy circle video down in the comments as well, and I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say about that. Okay, anyway guys, this has been Force of Will Archive saying until next time.